Hello and welcome to the Common Thread podcast. My name is Greg Wilson.
I'm Amanda Dowd.
I'm Howard DePass Jr.
And today we're going to be discussing the recent typhoon in the Philippines. We have our guests today. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Liz Berville.
And I'm Amanda Crawford-Staub.
Great. So one more time, speak on sort of where you're coming from. Go ahead first. The Haitian Student Cultural Association. Speak on that.
And I'm the president of the Haitian Cultural Association. I'm originally from Haiti as well.
And I just kind of have a general background working with different activism and aid organizations, including Invisible Children and Divest BU here on campus.
Cool. So, as I'm sure everybody knows, there was a devastating typhoon that occurred about a month ago in the Philippines.
About a month now.
Specifically, Tacloban. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. But like I said, it was devastating. There was a death toll of about 3,000, roughly 4,000 people, and it's injured 12,000 people, and people have been sort of displaced throughout the entire country. But fortunately, the international community has responded very well to it, donating thousands of dollars towards it. The issue was sort of drowned out by other issues at the time, which specifically in our own country was the sort of release of Obamacare for the website launched, which sort of took some attention away from it.
Yeah, definitely.
It didn't receive as much attention as some previous disasters, such as the Haitian earthquake a couple years back. And I know there was another typhoon or tsunami in Japan a couple years ago. So it didn't get as much as attention as all of that.
Right,
but people still responded very well to it. So
I heard that the response was almost as, I forget what I was reading one time, but the response was like almost as if we were going to war, like countries are going to war, like that, in terms of the intensity of like wanting to help, which I thought was like really alarming, just because you don't really hear of it being expressed like that in terms of natural disaster relief.
Well, I thought it was super interesting because I was reading there was a little bit of a controversy with international response to the Philippines, specifically with China. China was criticized for not giving enough aid initially. I think they were under 1 million, and a lot of people saw it as a strategic move, that because they have, a long history with the Philippines, that is negative. That was why. But at the same time, a lot of them, we're like, okay, who's going to be the great power now in Asia, in the Pacific region?
Right.
And after the criticism, of course, they gave more aid, quite a bit more.
Oh, wow.
But it was an interesting power play and political struggle. It was kind of like who can give the most aid? Who's going to be the greatest aid to this country now?
Exactly.
But sort of with that, you have this new trend in not only our governments donating large amounts of aid, but you have citizens of countries donating aid via text messages and popping up, so people are getting really involved on sort of a grassroots level.
Right.
Which sort of leads us into our prompt of the day. We want to discuss the trend on sort of relief donations, as it's called. I looked up a 2006 report published by the Disease Control Priorities Project, and they were discussing some interesting aspects, mainly criticizing sort of the abundance of relief donations. That's sort of all summarized in this following passage. The willingness to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per victim rescued from a collapsed building in a foreign country. I think that's citing an incident that happened in China around 2006. It's a credit to the solidarity of the international community, but it also presents an ethical issue when, once the attention has shifted away, modest funding is unavailable for the midterm survival of tens of thousands of victims. So they're sort of discussing this trend that occurs, that when these disasters occur, we're all so quick to pull out dollars, send text messages, and throw our money someplace where we don't even know where it's necessarily going, but we all feel that sort of satisfaction in donating. But as soon as the impact of these news events shifts, the money also shifts away as well. So I kind of want to open up the floor to everybody and see what everyone has to say from that, coming from their different backgrounds.
I mean, I feel like I've seen it a lot, because during the earthquake in Haiti or whatever, I was in high school and my family still lives in Haiti. So for me, it was dramatic, and I realized a lot of people were always, Haiti became a topic.
Were you in high school here
in
the
the
U.S.?
Okay. Here, yeah. So, a lot of people were talking to me about Haiti or whatever, whereas now it's even with our student group, HCA, the past members will say oh yeah, we had a lot of people coming to our student group meetings more and things like that. People were way more interested, whereas now now, it's like you don't really see it as much. It's more like, you know, it's kind of like Haiti becomes like, goes back to being Haiti for Haitians type of thing. I mean, not saying for Haitians, but like, you know, Haitians are the only ones that like really think about it.
Right.
Whereas like during that time, it was like literally everyone was talking about like Haiti or whatever. And I just feel like that does, like, you know, once there is something going on, it does draw a lot more attention. And then as soon as it goes away, you know, as soon as the news report goes away, a lot goes away or whatever. And like, you know, like most people I've met still don't know like what's going on in Haiti. They don't know much after the earthquake. All they really know is the earthquake. So
and
I can say.
Can you, if it's not too much, could you shed some light on maybe from, you know, your family's perspective of how things are sort of looking down there now that it's, you know, it's been a few years removed from the earthquake, or like how's the rehabilitation process going? And
I mean, the rehabilitation process is going. I mean, it's still going. There's still people living in tents, which a lot of people don't know. There's still a lot of people living in tents. A lot of it also is because, you know, a lot of people still, like, their homes are still broken or whatever. Right. Or, like, even if their homes are not broken, they don't have, like, enough funds to, like, really, like, fix it up and make sure, like, the infrastructure is good enough and safe enough. So some people actually prefer to live in the tents. Okay. But there are still people in the tents. And I do know, like, you know, I've been to Haiti, and like Port-au-Prince is like, you know, like the capital, like like right by like the palace and stuff is still like pretty bad. There's still like, you know, a whole lot of poverty. I mean, it was like by the capital, so it's like if you went down to Washington D.C. and it looked really bad, I'm pretty sure like, you know, it's like really it's more apparent there. I mean, yeah, aid is going, but it's going really slow. I do know, like, I've read a lot of, like, news reports where they talk about how, like, Haiti still hasn't received a lot of the aid that was promised to them. And a lot of it has to do with, like, for example, I do know, like, I was reading an article about how, like, USAID, to get, like, the funding, you kind of have to get the things through USAID. So it's like, yeah, we'll give you, like, $1,000, but if you're buying tents, it has to be USAID tents. It has to be like, so it's like the funding is going, but it's like it's still being like kind of like recycled through whoever's giving the aid as well. So yeah.
And I'll just say, Liz, it's really interesting to hear your story and about how you're connected to the conflict through your family and through your friends, because really I think this speaks to a very like classic problem of aid and aid organizations, in that people will give money initially and in huge amounts. They recognize that, for example, a typhoon, a tsunami is devastating, but really the problem for aid organizations is keeping the money coming in and keeping people really, I think, emotionally connected. It's easy for you because, again, your ties are very strong, but for others, I think at the end of the day, it becomes a problem of just being able to relate to that issue and feel connected to it. I was talking to a friend recently about a study that talked about, I guess, the capacity for human empathy and about how human beings have trouble relating to more than one person at a time. And it followed this aid organization that sent out emails to all of its donors and recorded the amount of money they sent in response, and learned that really donors don't respond as much when you talk about an entire village or an entire nation, but when you show a story of one person, they found that the amount of money coming in was a lot more. So that, I think, helps to explain a little bit why it's difficult for these organizations to keep money coming in.
There's something about numbers, and they've done a lot of studies on this, but something about staggering numbers doesn't really seem to affect people. You know, you can hear the term millions are suffering, and it's still, I think it's because the lack of emotional connection, like you said, you know, when you hear a personal story and you can put a name and a face and a human being to it. It inclines people to give more.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to agree with that because, like, I mean, you know, I am from Haiti, so of course, you know, it was like really hard for me, but like you said, like, you know, it was harder for me because, like, my family was involved, my friends were involved, you know, so it's like this was like home. So for me, it was kind of like I was kind of like thinking more of like the individuals, whereas, you know, most people giving aid were like asking me like as a whole, and I'd be answering like, oh yeah, you know, my mom's fine, but it's like, you know, it's kind of like a different shift or whatever, you know, seeing like how most people will care more about, like, you know, like if you tell somebody about one story or something, they do care way more than like once you say like, oh yeah, 10,000s are dead. It's like, oh wow, that's crazy, but it's like, do you really feel that empathy? It's just like, you know, it's a number.
And where in the States were you living at the time?
Boston.
Oh, okay, from Boston.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And like, do you feel that maybe if you were still living in Haiti, you would have been able to contribute more, or do you think that, or was it pretty limited here, I guess?
I mean, yes and no. I feel like being here, I was able to like, do like earthquake relief, something at my school or whatever. We were able to start something, which I feel like was much easier because I mean, in Haiti, everyone kind of had like their own problems, you know.
Right.
And like Port-au-Prince is like very like central in Haiti, whereas like everybody in Haiti has family living in Port-au-Prince somewhere somehow.
Okay.
So like no matter where you are, even though like my family weren't physically like in Port-au-Prince at the time, we have like so much family and friends that's like. There's no way I could really help because it's like I'm worrying about my cousins, my aunts, so it's like I can probably contact my aunt and make sure she's okay, but there's no way I could help. Whereas being here, I was able to like actually donate to something broader that'll probably help more people as a whole than like being in Haiti where I would be focusing on like those individuals that are like mine or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you think this is a problem of sort of people's personal interests in that we may lose attention, our attention span moves rather fast, or can some of this be attributed to the media who sort of moves past these issues rather quickly in order to find that new hot story? Or does this fall in between?
I think it's media for the most part. I think it's really media because like even myself, like I don't really think about earthquake in Haiti, like I mean I think about it obviously, but it's not like something that's like as a parent or whatever. It's not something that comes up in like
burning topic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not. And I feel like during that time, all I saw was earthquake in Haiti, and that was the only thing that was always on my mind. And I feel like for me, being Haitian, Haiti should be more in my mind than anybody else. So if even for me, it's like going away as the media goes away, then it'd be easier for anybody else who doesn't have that tie or whatever. So.
I can't help but wonder if maybe it's a first world issue. I mean, you notice that the countries giving aid tend to be among the wealthiest in the world. And the reality is, if you are living in that kind of a country, you are at least currently enjoying a privilege that, a third world country or a developing country that, has just had a major disaster, it's almost impossible to understand what's going on because you're not there at the moment.
Right.
And maybe people who have experienced it, are more inclined to continue to give aid. I'm not sure if they have statistics on that. But it's kind of like, I can, even for myself, I can hear about what's happening. I can think it's so horrible in the moment. But, when the news coverage stops, I'm going to go back to my, day-to-day life, which doesn't have mention of disasters in it.
Right.
And I think that's just like you said, it's kind of part of our culture in the media.
Yeah.
But I guess, like, is it wrong to expect, and this is a question to I guess everybody, myself included, like, is it wrong to I guess expect people to keep on giving, like, even past when it's been in the media, I guess months after, years later, if they themselves might not always have the means, because I guess once a disaster really strikes, I feel like there's a part of people that is willing to give no matter what their income status is, no matter what their financial situations at the time. Someone is like, what, regardless of these other struggles, I'm going to give whatever I can to help Haiti, to help the Philippines, to help Japan a few years ago, like whatever, Katrina, these sort of things. But as time goes away from the topic, now they start to drift back into their regular routine of bills, expenses, and so on. So I guess, is it wrong to expect people to still want to give so often to these relief causes, even though they have to get back in their original routine as well?
Well, I think some of the responsibility comes down to those who are asking for the money. And I think in these times it's easy to collect a lot of money because you have this event that's very timely, and it's very easy to get to stir sort of emotion around it. But they need to sort of build long-term concern and sort of sincerity behind these donations, because if you're just donating because somebody's asking you because something that just happened, you may not necessarily care about that issue 2 years later. But if you sort of are really invested in what you're donating your money towards, which is what this article talked about, sort of instead of asking for these relief donations but sort of building a general interest in these topics, then the money doesn't stop because people are invested in it more emotionally.
Right.
I mean, I think that's also like, sorry, I think that has to do a lot with like first world also, because I do know, like, in Haiti, whatever, we kind of have like our culture kind of ties us together or whatever. So it's like, like in the U.S. I've noticed, like, most people are like out with their immediate family, and then they see like the rest of their family, like, to the side or whatever. But with me, it's like everyone I know is like my family. That's literally it, And I feel like because of that, I tend to have more empathy. because it's like, oh, so and so's cousin's niece needs something, you know. It's like I'm able to like actually connect more, whereas in the first world it's kind of like people are kind of thought to think about their family first. You know, in Haiti, people are like, oh, I'm taking care of my family. But, like, you know, even, like, in the diaspora, most Haitians actually, like, donate money. You know, like, you know, Haitians, there's always, like, a joke with, like, Haitian kids. It's like, oh, watch out, so where your clothes are going to get shipped off to, like, your family, because that's what we do. So it's like, you know, we kind of have this, like, caring for each other. It's kind of like we're supposed to help each other, whereas I feel like in the first world, we don't see it as much. So we kind of need the media to kind of bring us there to want to give stuff, and I feel like that's what makes it hard for it to continue happening, is because we don't naturally, culturally, it's not something that people think about doing or whatever.
Sort of more individualistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, I think you can see reflected in the way that I think even aid, kind of as a culture in the United States, you can start to see it change. For example, I know there's a lot of discussion now about, you know, are we millennials as a generation just more apathetic? Are we incapable of connecting, you know, to these things on an emotional level? Do we just not care? And at the same time, in a response to that, I think, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about this, some aid organizations are actually kind of pulling away, I think, a little bit from the more emotional appeal and, in a sense, maybe trying to reach people where they're at. For example, I overheard a woman recently from the Global Poverty Project talk about how one of their biggest appeals, or I guess draws for new donors, is the release of Beyonce tickets to this like global festival, that a global citizen festival that they have in New York City.
No kidding.
Yeah, so basically they give away these tickets and hope that people will come and eventually become invested in their cause, but the initial appeal isn't even really related to the exact issue they're trying to address. So again, I feel like aid is like becoming shrouded in all of these questions of, can we care? Like, should we try different tactics? Do we need the emotional appeal?
You know, it begs an interesting question. That's really interesting. I didn't know that about how they're you know, employing different tactics now.
Yeah,
and I mean, hey, whatever works. Why not?
It's working too. Yeah. The Global Poverty Project is doing well.
You know, I'm curious though, because some people are. Maybe the question shouldn't be, are you giving, but what are you giving? Because some people are critical of just donating money as a practice. They say, you know, you shouldn't just be giving monetary support. Either, you know, it's not helping that much, or it's not helping enough, or actually you should provide people. It's a very controversial subject. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, with Haiti, I've seen, like, you know, like I said, a lot of the aid hasn't been given, but, like, I feel like a lot of like the things that are thriving are like the things that have more support, like more people actually going to the country to help. So, like, you know, doctors actually traveling to give assistance instead of like giving funding to help out, you know, in the hospitals. I do think that helps a lot more, because with monetary, like you said, it's very controversial. It's like, do you actually see the aid? But like, if I'm a doctor and I travel there, I know that I did something, and I feel like that's easier to help. I mean, not everybody can, you know, there's not much that everybody can do, but I feel like that works a lot more. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, ultimately, you know, time investments are probably the best investments, but not everybody can invest their time, because, you know, we're busy people. If you're living in California, you're not going to be able to fly down somewhere and invest your time wherever it may be needed. So ultimately, money, it makes sense that money is what people should be asking for, but I guess it also sort of suggests that maybe the issues we should be concerned about, or at least the most concerned about, should be more local, stuff that you can actually have a direct impact on, instead of I mean, it sounds negative, but thinking so globally, I mean, if you're just donating money, you might be better off investing your time, say, in like a local community center, if that works.
I strongly agree with you. I think what you said earlier about people being unable to give their time, I don't necessarily think that that is a bad thing. I know that a lot of times in the world of aid, there are lots of volunteers and people who kind of parachute themselves into areas where they think they need help, and the reality is that they don't have the skill set to appropriately do so. And so sometimes I think the best option is to give money at the time, and I think that you're right about people being better capable of being able to help their own communities where they know what's going on, and to be able to look around them. I think that time donated there sometimes is better well spent.
You bring up a really interesting point when you say, like, you know, knowing your own community and what's needed, because that brings up the other controversial point of, like, the savior complex and how are you exactly are you helping really, or are you hurting them because you don't understand what the need is, and going in as literally as a foreigner it can be, one, presumptuous, and two, hurtful.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's where I agree, but I also feel like with aid, that's also one of the big issues as well, because it's like you're giving this money, but like a lot of times, most people that were sending out text messages barely even knew what company they were sending it out to. You know,
so companies taking advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so it's like
off
you
of
really don't know where exactly the money is going or whatever. And yeah, like, you know, going there is also just as hard. But I do feel like, you know, if you are a doctor or something like that and you do go there, then it's like, you know you're doing what you're going to do. I mean, not everybody can travel, and I think that's when it matters the most. I mean, I feel like, for example, you know, we live in Boston. If we're donating, it's probably easier for us to donate to like Partners in Health, because Partners in Health is right down the street, and you know, they do hold like conferences and things like that all the time, and like it's more accessible to us than like something global like the American Red Cross, where we can't really contact them or like get, you know, really like know exactly what's going on. So even if like the aid is not necessarily going to somewhere to somewhere local or whatever, it's probably more easier, it's probably better, like easier to work with something that's like closer to you, or something you actually can have some sort of access to. Whereas, you know, donating, because like, you know, there were companies being donated to like Yale. I mean, I know what Yale does, but like most people don't, and it's like, you know, a lot of people donate to Yale, and most people don't even know like what it is. They just know it's a company that is represented by Wycliffe, and it's like, you know, you can't be giving aid that way. I mean, I just don't think that's like the right way to do it.
I feel very strongly that we need to have, you know, the question is, who do we put that authority with? But we need someone in authority who can be like, you know, these organizations are reputable, these are not, because people, like you said, people just don't know sometimes. They think they're doing good, and meanwhile it could be a fraud at the front, you know.
I mean, I don't think you need like an overarching figure to sort of point them out.
Well,
but I
don't mean it that way.
I think ultimately we're responsible for where we put our money. You know, you wouldn't go buy something from a sketchy dude standing on a corner if you didn't really know what he was about. So
well, no, absolutely. But I mean, I think that probably the average American, you know, they will see some kind of ad or you know, or text message thing, and they'll just think, oh yeah, I'll do it because it's right there, and you know, they might not, you know, take the time to investigate, or they have a little too much trust in whatever they're being shown. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, as people, take responsibility for where we're putting our money, but at the same time, I think there needs to be more of the media needs to be doing a better job of that. Why aren't they publicizing, you know, which you know, organizations are scams and which aren't,
right?
You know?
I think that's a major reason why there is a lack of funding from people like on a regular basis, is because, you know, we're unaware of what are the good organizations versus what are the bad ones, and it's really easy to give to like some of the bigger ones, like you said, like Red Cross and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, like, is your money really going to go to, you know, a family or a child in like dire need of you know, food or water? I think that's what people don't really know and understand. So we're skeptical from the jump. You know what I mean? And that really takes a lot to put out your money when you are that skeptical. And so I do agree that, you know, maybe if the media helped us in sort of solidifying our thoughts to organizations, it might make the process a little easier.
Okay. Oh, and also, and I think that's what makes it like so tough also to give, is because if let's say I were to give, and then I come to find out that this company, you know, has like a huge overhead and like their money's not going where I thought it was going, I'm gonna be really skeptical about giving the next time. And it's like I already have this lack of, you know, connection to them, you know, so now it's like, nah, I really don't want to give. And I think that just like makes it harder to continue receiving aid.
Hold on to that thought, because I really want to jump on it. So
Okay.
It's there, you being reluctant about giving aid. I just want to touch on a few points. One, I think that it is really difficult to find the right organization. I remember once, a year ago, I was fundraising money for something, and I tried so hard. I was like, I want to give it to this refugee camp that was like on the border of Kenya and Somalia, and I tried so hard to just someone. I was like, listen, I have money to give you. Like, tell me where I can put it so it will go directly there. And they're just, I couldn't. I tried, and so that was really difficult. And then, again, just back to this entire idea of skepticism. Like I mentioned before, I was heavily involved with Invisible Children, and so the idea, the word scam, it like made my skin tingle, just because Invisible Children, after Coney 2012, this huge video campaign that came out, was I guess, put under the spotlight, and all of a sudden it was a criticism and it was a scam and all these awful things were happening. And surprisingly, my response and the response of Invisible Children has been, I mean, for the most part, we were like, okay, like, we don't think some of the things you're saying are true. So the media, I think, can sensationalize things. But also, at the end of the day, we were like, this is good. Like, I think that we, for a long time, people have been so trustworthy of the organizations that they're participating in, donating to, the products that they're buying. And Invisible Children, and myself included, said no. Like, you need to be questioning where you're giving your money. This is, like, if it starts with Invisible Children, good, keep going. But at the end of the day, I think it would be sad if this ends up being kind of, as you said, like a form of paralysis. Like, it's good to be better informed about where we're giving our money, but if at the end of the day that's going to prevent you from giving it all, then I don't know. I think it becomes this delicate balance, and there needs to be one.
Definitely. Well, we're just at about our time mark. Does anybody have any sort of closing ideas, any lessons that they learned from the conversation?
Do your research.
Do your research.
Where you're giving your money.
Really, like, I think that's key. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of how many people plug an organization or like put it out there, I think taking the time to do your research, like, on your own. If it's your money, people are concerned about, where's my money going? You know, what could I be spending on otherwise? You know, so if that's always a concern, if that's always a question, or where's the relief going to go, I think research really needs to be done thoroughly.
And you never know what else you might find out about an organization. I mean, the money might be going exactly where they say it's going, but you might find out they have other values or ideas that you don't agree with.
True.
I mean, I've found that a number of times over the years with some very prominent organizations. So
Definitely. Well, I think we'll end it on that note. I'd like to thank our guests one more time for the wonderful conversation.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Liz and
guys.
Amanda.
Always welcome back. I'm Greg,
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Howard.
and that was the Common Thread Podcast. Have a nice week.